All right, welcome everyone to the House General and Housing Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, and we are here for an introduction and walkthrough of H 276, an act relating to creating a rental housing registry with Representative Tom Stevens, sponsor of Waterbury, and Chair Stevens, I don't think we need to go around the table and introduce ourselves.
No.
All right, why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So H276 is bringing back a section of work that we've been working on for several years about a rental registry. And this the short history is that it was about 4 or 5 years ago now. There was a summer study committee that worked with, and it was more than a summer study committee. Actually, it was a committee that was made up of administration officials and of stakeholders, and it was to review material regarding the rental market. And it came out in a bill S79 that was vetoed, and then it was part of S226 last year. And it was excised in the negotiation process in order to make a compromise to get the housing bills that we had S210 and S226. But this piece of it was taken out. What it proposes to do is to create a system that is already in place for a number of different municipalities across the state: Burlington, Barry, St. John's, Barry, I believe Brattleboro, where there are registries in place, and this would not overtake those. That any municipality that has a registry would be allowed to keep their own registry. This is for every municipality that does not have a registry. And what it would be is a $35 registration fee for every unit, which would be the lowest unit per unit registry price. And those fees would be going toward running the health and safety provisions that we did pass last year and that were paid for out of the general fund that would be run by the Division of Fire Safety. So it would create a registry. Much of this information is already available in a bunch of different places, but it's not available publicly or easily to get to create one particular list. And we've heard since prior to what we're considering now, the contemporary housing crisis, there was a question of how do we know where these apartments are? And I'll speak back for Waterbury's own experience with Tropical Storm Irene, when our downtown was hammered by flooding and we needed to find housing for 75 families or more. And we couldn't easily, even though we had a grand list that showed where there were more apartments than perhaps another town may have. We had an extra line. They didn't have easy access to where units might be, and the registry, the way that the bill has gotten, the way that this language has gotten over time is that there would be limited accessibility to the list, but that it would create that list that said here are where the apartments are or the units are. And it would also, and that's for long-term, and then for short-term rentals, several years ago, we passed enabling law that allowed municipalities to start regulating on their own short-term rentals. This would basically be a list for short-term rentals, a registry list for short-term rentals, and very quickly in that category. We don't know where they are exactly, and we don't know which ones are actually rental units that were formerly long-term rental, and we may still not know that just from this registry. We don't know if they would be second homes. We don't know if they would be corporately owned series of homes, but we would ask that the short-term rentals be registered under that same, under the short-term rental piece of this legislation. It is data that we're looking for with this. Data is really, if we don't have the data, then we have anecdotes. And it's hard to have discussions about how we should move forward with rental policy if we don't have better data than what we have already. And so this has just been an attempt for many, many years, more than just the last 5 years, to get this registry going. And we think in the past, this committee has thought that it was reasonable and that we worked with stakeholders, including the Landlord Association, legal aid. We'll hear testimony soon in the next few days from Sarah Carpenter, who used to be the executive director of the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, who led the study group on this. And they are, it's been frustrating to see it not put into place. The understanding is that, there's people have privacy questions about it. Why should I put my name on, why should I put my property on another list? And it's like, well, they're on lists that are, while they're public information, they're not as accessible for what we're seeking to do with it. And I think over the last 2 years of this housing crisis, when we've been trying to figure out how to break through this 1% vacancy rate statewide, to me, it's become much more necessary to have this function available to us. And so that is, in a nutshell, what it does. There are probably some pieces to it that I've asked David to do a walkthrough of the material after the lockdown, which should be any minute now. So it's again, it's too easy for me to say, well, this is something we've passed several times, so you all should pass it. We should look at it and understand it and decide for ourselves whether we should move forward with this. It's an integral piece of our, it's a priority for me because, again, we've passed this several times and we have to, it's passed the House, it's passed the Senate before, and it's relatively unchanged, I think, from years prior, perhaps with adjustments that had to happen after we passed S226 last year. So you'll learn a lot more with the walkthrough than you will with me. I'm just trying to do that general umbrella overview.
Thank you. Representative Burrows.
Chair Stevens, thank you. Can you describe, is this only for data collection, or is it a way by which information can be pushed out to property owners as well?
It's primarily data collection, but that material will be available for there were certain barriers or bumpers that we put on who had access to that material, so that it was not supposed to be used for, it was prohibited from being used for commercial purposes, so people couldn't buy that list. And
I'm thinking more like making sure that property owners are fully aware of the pluses and minuses of, or the availability of funds through VHIP and what the requirements are through there.
It could function like that because, again, just because stakeholders come into the building, doesn't mean they represent everybody. And certainly we have heard again and again that people don't know that things are happening. This could be a tool that, and David can go over the exact ways that might work. But the intent was, yes, if there were changes to the law that affected property owners, that this would be one way of communicating with them.
Thank you.
Representative Parsons had a question, and then I don't know whether Chair Stevens, are we wanting to kind of go off live here before our
probably.
drill, or just?
I think we're going until there's a drill.
Okay, great.
There's a certain element of vamping because, this would be an emergency. And
Okay.
it was coming.
All right, Representative Parsons.
Well, thank you. I have a question. You said all this information is out there. It's just not in one spot. Is that what you said?
Again, most of it is available either through landlord certificates, tax department records. We have limited access to them, but there's not one place that I'm aware of that would be where it would be accessible for the purposes that we would be seeking to use it for.
Okay, but all the information that you're looking to gather is collected at some agent, some,
Again, David will clarify.
okay,
Yeah.
I was just curious if all the information was already out there. Does this mean we need to registry or?
Yeah, we have a hard time going to say, this is, this is from the tax department, this is what we can share or be shared with us. This is from the rental certificates. And so this was just trying to put it onto one particular place, but also I'm not sure. And I'm honestly not sure that we know that you owned X number of units except through your tax records, or what you would pay wouldn't necessarily, or your landlord certificates. Again, this is just trying to get onto a list to say, Parsons LLC owns these apartments and they are in these places. And, we tried to make it so that there is a benefit for the registration fee. And we've heard from, so that's any benefits we can talk about later, but benefits to the landlords, property owners. I think any municipality that has this in place, in Burlington, for instance, it's $110 per unit, and they've found that by providing the enforcement and the safety, that it's been quite reasonable. St. Johnsbury is one of the most recent places that I've seen where they've instituted a policy like this that has been. Again, people didn't know how to react. Why am I paying an extra $35 or $50 or $100? And they found, many of the municipalities have found that they get a benefit. The property owners have gotten a benefit from this, because right now, the health and safety, again, we dealt with the health and safety portion of it, and we're in transition now with the Division of Fire Safety. We moved from the health department to the Division of Fire Safety elements last year, elements that were not part of the Division of Fire Safety's purview. Division of Fire Safety could go into these apartments because they're commercial properties, and they could determine whether the electrical was safe or the plumbing was safe, or there were certain health and safety issues. But we also have a sectional law that was in the health department that was about habitability, that the Department of Fire Safety just didn't have. They couldn't enforce that portion of it until last year, or we're in this transition period now. The issue with that was also about town health officers or volunteers, and the fees that would be generated from this would pay for the enforcement officers over time.
Representative Labonte?
Thank you. Is this $35 registration fee, is that annually or just a one-time fee?
No, it'd be annually, David. The fees are, yeah.
And who's going to police it, if you will? And are there any penalties to the individual that doesn't want to do it?
There's enforcement mechanisms. There are fines involved. I mean, in terms of getting on the list, I think there's always been a reality that we're not going to get to 100%. So how many fees are raised through this would, of course, be determined by the percentage of people who are signing up. Again, there's language in the bill that David can cover.
I think we'll return for walkthrough a little bit later.
Could we go offline?